Welcome, my friends, to a place where we share inspiration and positivity. We're thrilled to present to you our video dedicated to Ihor Kolomoyskyi. Enjoy. Ihor Valeriyovych Kolomoyskyi, born 13 February 1963, is a Ukrainian-born Israeli Cypriot billionaire businessman, once considered the leading oligarch in Ukraine. Already an entrepreneur in the last years of Soviet Ukraine, in 2010 Kolomoyskyi was rated as the second richest person in Ukraine and as one of the country's most influential oligarchs. In 1992, he had co-founded PrivatBank and its informal stable of companies, Privat Group. He subsequently acquired extensive media holdings. Between 2014 and 2016, Kolomoyskyi served as Governor of Dnipropetrovsk Oblast until his dismissal by President Petro Poroshenko. That year, his undercapitalized bank was declared a threat to Ukraine's financial security and taken into state ownership. In 2019, Kolomoyskyi's media power and funding supported Volodymyr Zelensky's successful presidential campaign to unseat Poroshenko. In 2020, he was indicted in the United States on charges related to large-scale bank fraud. In 2021, the U.S. banned Kolomoyskyi and his family from entering the country, accusing him of corruption and being a threat to the Ukrainian public's faith in democratic institutions. Zelenskyy reportedly stripped Kolomoyskyi of his Ukrainian citizenship in 2022. Later that same year, those of Kolomoyskyi's assets deemed to be of strategic value to the state in light of the Russian invasion were nationalist. These included Ukraine's largest gasoline companies. In 2023, Kolomoyskyi was arrested by the Security Service of Ukraine (SBU) on charges of money laundering and fraud, and placed under pre-trial arrest. As we embark on the next leg of our journey, let's unpack the layers of name and examine its core elements. The transliteration of Ihor Kolomoyskyi's name into English has numerous variants, including Igor, or Ihor for his first name, and Kolomoyskyi, 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 Kolomovsky, or Kolomovsky for his surname. Kolomoyskyi uses the nickname Benya, an invocation of the infamous Ukrainian and Jewish criminal reprobate Benya Krik, popularly fictionalized in Isaac Babel's Odessa stories. Occasionally, Kolomoyskyi is called Bonifacy, the eponymous star of the popular Soviet cartoon Bonifacy's Holidays by Soyuz Multfilm. Get ready to uncover the mysteries surrounding early life and education as we navigate its intriguing terrain. Kolomoyskyi was born into a Jewish family in Dnipropetrovsk, Ukrainian SSR, Soviet Union. Both parents had graduated in engineering. His mother worked at the university and father in a metallurgical plant. Already in his childhood he was considered to be very determined, diligent and serious, was enthusiastic about sports, and liked to play chess. Professionally, he followed the example of his parents. After graduating from the Gymnasium 21 in Dnipro with the Komsomol badge for outstanding school performance, in 1980 he took up graduate studies in engineering at the Leonid Brezhnev Dnipropetrovsk Metallurgical Institute, now the National Metallurgical Academy of Ukraine, graduating in 1985. As a Komsomol activist, Kolomoyskyi was involved in the so-called disco movement, an attempt by the authorities to promote an ideological safe alternative to the growing, underground, rebroadcast and performance of Anglo-American rock music, including Immers, heavy metal and punk. Kolomoyskyi used his role in organizing approved dance venues and concerts to begin his trading career, as did others in his position, several of whom would go on to play prominent roles in post-Soviet national politics, among them Yulia Tymoshenko, Viktor Pinchuk, Sarytko, and Oleksandr Turchinov. Without further ado, let's move on to the topic of business career. In 1986, Kolomoyskyi found work in the Firenet Trading Cooperative. In 1990, with two other graduates from Dnipropetrovsk universities, Gennady Bogolyubov and Alexei Martynov, Kolomoyskyi created a joint enterprise marketing office equipment bought in Moscow. After the collapse of the USSR, the partners, joined by the son of a major Soviet entrepreneur, Leonid Miloslavsky, began to import foreign goods from sneakers and sportswear to telephones. To pay for the imports, Kolomoyskyi arranged the export of steel products. Soon they realized the greater profits to be made in internationally trading the locally sourced ores and metal. Among other operations, their Privat Group supplied fuel to the mining company Pokrovsky Adzomikizevsky GOK, receiving in return manganese ore for export. In 1991, together with Leonid Miloslavsky, Alexei Martynov, and Hennady Bolyubov, he founded Centusa Limited, which transported and resold goods and equipment from Moscow to Dnipropetrovsk. Later, petroleum products were imported. They expanded into ferroalloy, supplied Adzomikij GOK, later Pokrov Mining and Processing Plant GOK with fuel, and received manganese ore for further export under barter agreements. In March 1992, the four companies of the Privat Group established PrivatBank CJSC. Unlike state-owned banks, Privat willingly served private entrepreneurs and in 1995 participated aggressively in the voucher scheme for the privatization of state assets. With the blessing of Prime Minister Leonid Kuchma, also from Dnipro, and whose successful presidential campaign in 1994 Kolomoyskyi and his partners later funded, PrivatBank was also the only Ukrainian lender to receive permission from the National Bank of Ukraine to open overseas branches. One branch in Latvia, established in 1992, was later implicated in the 2014 Moldovan bank fraud scandal. The operations of a second, opened in the late years in Cyprus, helped precipitate the nationalization of PrivatBank in 2016. Between 1999 and 2003, Kolomoyskyi gained control of Ukhnefta, Kalinin coke and chemical plant, Ozka market in Dnipropetrovsk, Nikopol ferroalloy plant, and other companies. Through Privat Group, whose board he chaired from 1997, Kolomoyskyi controlled, at various points in the early years, 3 Ukrainian airlines, Aerosvit Airlines, Dniprovier, Donbassaro. All went bankrupt. Through their asset management company Mansville Enterprises Limited, he controlled a further 3 Scandinavian airlines, Squeeze Express, City Airline, and Simmer Sterling, each of which again, within a few years, filed for bankruptcy and ceased operations. As of 2008, other fields of activity in Ukraine as well as in Russia and Romania included ferroalloys, finance, oil products, and mass media. Kolomoyskyi's media assets were initially controlled by Glavrid Media Holding, which owns information agency UNIAN, the weekly magazine Profile, and newspapers Novaya Gazeta and Gazeta Pokivsky. In early September 2007, Ronald Lauder announced that Kolomoyskyi had acquired a 3% stake and was on the board of directors of Central European Media Enterprises. In April 2010, through his wholly owned Harley Trading Limited company, for around $300 million, Kolomoyskyi secured control of one of Ukraine's largest media conglomerates, Media Group, which operates 8 Ukrainian TV channels. In November 2019, the New York Times reported that Kolomoyskyi was behind plans to build a controversial ski resort in Svidovets, Ukraine, and quoted a professor at a local university describing Kolomoyskyi as a leech who sucks our blood here and puts it in Switzerland. Now, let's shift our perspective and explore wealth from a different angle. As of 2007, Kolomoyskyi was a billionaire listed by Forbes as the 799th man in the world with $3.8 billion. In 2010, Kyiv Post estimated his wealth at $6.24 billion. In March 2012, Forbes placed him 377th with $3 billion. In 2010, Kyiv Post listed Kolomoyskyi as the 2nd richest person in Ukraine. In 2012, Forbes rated him the 3rd richest person in Ukraine after Rinat Akhmetov and Viktor Pinchuk. In March 2015, after the sharp decline in the value of the Ukrainian hryvnia, The Economist listed his net worth as $1.36 billion. In 2019, The Ukrainian magazine Focus placed Kolomoyskyi third on a list of the 100 most influential Ukrainians. As we progress through this video, let's now turn our gaze towards activities in the Jewish community. Kolomoyskyi has been a prominent figure in Ukraine's organized Jewish community. In 2008, he was elected the president of the United Jewish Community of Ukraine in Kyiv. He became a major funder in Ukraine of the Chabad movement, which has Ukrainian roots. In 2012, with Gennady Bogolubov and Viktor Pinchuk, he financed construction of what purports to be the largest multifunctional Jewish community center in Europe, the Menorah Center, in downtown Dnipro. Comprising 7 marble towers, of which the highest is 20 stories arranged in the shape of a menorah. It houses a synagogue, 2 hotels, kosher restaurant and grocery store, and Jewish Memory and Holocaust Museum. In 2010 in Berlin, after promising the outgoing president he would donate $14 million, Kolomoyskyi was appointed as the president of the European Council of Jewish Communities (ECJC). Some Western European ECJC board members described his elevation as a putsch and a Soviet-style takeover. After several resigned in protest, Kolomoyskyi quit the ECJC and, together with fellow Ukrainian oligarch Volodymyr Zelenskyy, founded the European Jewish Union in April 2011. Launched by Kolomoyskyi and Zelenskyy at Disneyland Paris, the EJU subsequently styled itself the European Jewish Parliament. Modeled on the Israeli Knesset with 120 members, its declared aim is to represent the concerns of the Jewish community to the European Union. The Brussels-based initiative, with which Kolomoyskyi no longer appears to be associated, has been opposed by much of the established Jewish community leadership. In the following section, we'll be immersing ourselves in the captivating world of nationalization of PrivatBank. Beginning in 2010, rumors circulated that Kolomoyskyi's assets were coming under pressure from the Ukrainian authorities and that he was spending increasingly more time in Switzerland. In September 2013, Kolomoyskyi was criticized by Mr. Justice Man in a court case in London involving an attempted hostile takeover in October 2010 of Alexander Thukov's JKX Oil and Gas Company. The judge noted that Kolomoyskyi had a reputation of having sought to take control of a company at gunpoint in Ukraine, and that a finance director considered she had strong grounds for doubting the honesty of Mr. Kolomoyskyi. In 2015, Viktor Pinchuk brought a $2 billion civil action against Kolomoyskyi and Gennady Bogolubov in the High Court of Justice in London over the 2004 purchase of a Ukrainian mining company. Allegations made include murder and bribery. In January 2016, an undisclosed out-of-court settlement was reached just before the trial was due to start. As of April 1, 2016, Media Group ceased all TV broadcasts. According to Ruslan Bortnik, director of the Ukrainian Institute of Analysis and Policy Management, unable to find external sponsors and faced with the determination of the Ukrainian government to secure own television presence, the TV project was proving unprofitable for Kolomoyskyi. Other projects, like Kolomoyskyi Football Club Dnipro, where the players were not receiving their pay, were also in difficulty. Through Privat Group, Kolomoyskyi also had an interest in Budivelnik Kyiv. In 2019, after being relegated, FC Dnipro was dissolved. In 2016, Kolomoyskyi and his business partner Gennady Bogolubov were accused of defrauding Ukraine's largest bank, PrivatBank, of billions of dollars through large unsecured loans to shareholders. Between mid-2015 and mid-2016, the bank had handed out over $1 billion in loans to firms owned by 7 top managers and 2 subordinates of Kolomoyskyi. The Bank of Italy meanwhile shut down the Italian branch of Latvian lender AS PrivatBank after finding breaches of money laundering regulations. Valeria Honteva, the former chairwoman of Ukraine's central bank, characterized Kolomoyskyi and Bogolubov Operation PrivatBank as one of the biggest financial scandals of the 21st century. Large-scale coordinated fraudulent actions of the bank shareholders and management caused a loss to the state of at least $5.50 billion, Honteva said in March 2018. This is 33% of the population's deposits, 40% of our country's monetary base. A key mechanism appears to have been the PrivatBank subsidiary in Cyprus, which the Ukrainian regulator treated as if it was just another of the bank's domestic branches. In December 2016, declaring that Kolomoyskyi's bank was severely undercapitalized and a threat to the country's financial system, the Ukrainian government nationalized the lender, then the largest in Ukraine. A $5.60 billion bailout was financed with IMF funds. In 2018, the now nationalized PrivatBank brought a lawsuit against Kolomoyskyi and Volodymyr in the High Court in London and secured a worldwide freeze on their assets. The High Court ruled that it had no jurisdiction, but in 2019 the judgment was overturned on appeal, with the UK Supreme Court finding that the $3 billion claim against the former owners of the bank can be heard in a London court. In April 2019, a Ukrainian court ruled that the nationalization of PrivatBank was illegal. Ukraine's central bank said it would not be possible to reverse the nationalization and that it would appeal the decision. Kolomoyskyi stated that he has no interest in taking back control of the bank but sought in compensation for losses he insists were incurred during the nationalization. On February 14, 2017, PrivatBank was liquidated. In the summer of 2022, the Economic Court of Kiev and the Supreme Court of Ukraine affirmed the legality of the National Bank of Ukraine's actions in taking PrivatBank into government control. With the foundation laid, let's embark on a journey into US investigations and blacklisting. In April 2019, it was reported the FBI was investigating Kolomoyskyi over financial crimes involving Gennady Volodymyr, the Kryvyi businessman Vadim Shulman, and Mordecai Motikov of Florida in relation to Kolomoyskyi steel holdings in West Virginia and Northern Ohio in the United States and his mining interests in Ghana and Australia. Legal filings from American prosecutors in 2019 detailed how Kolomoyskyi used his control of Ukraine's largest retail bank, PrivatBank, to loot staggering sums from Ukrainian depositors, and via a series of shell companies and offshore accounts whisked the money out of the country and into the US. In August 2020, the United States Department of Justice DOJ in the Southern District of Florida, Miami, alleged that Kolomoyskyi, Volodymyr, Mordecai Korf, and Uriel later collectively obtained numerous properties as part of a $5.50 billion Ponzi scheme as an international conspiracy to launder money embezzled and fraudulently obtained from PrivatBank, which was nationalized in 2016 to prevent a collapse of Ukraine's equivalent to the United States FDIC, and using PrivatBank's Cyprus branch as a washing machine for the stolen loaned funds. In April 2021, Kolomoyskyi and his wife and children were banned from entering the US. The United States Department of State accused him of corruptly using his time as governor of Dnipropetrovsk to personally enrich himself. He was involved in corrupt acts that undermined rule of law and the Ukrainian public's faith in their government's democratic institutions and public processes, including using his political influence and official power for his personal benefit. In his statement, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said, in January 2022, the DOJ announced that it had filed a civil forfeiture complaint against Kolomoyskyi in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Florida, alleging that more than $6 million in proceeds from the sale of commercial real estate in Dallas, Texas, are subject to forfeiture based on violations of federal money laundering statutes. This was the fourth such action filed by the DOJ in connection with the same alleged criminal activity, the laundering of funds illegally obtained from PrivatBank through multi-million-dollar U.S. property investments. Get ready for an exciting part as we dive into political engagement in Ukraine. Kolomoyskyi opposed the presidential ambitions and government of Viktor Yanukovych and his broadly pro-Russian Party of Regions. He had been an ally of Yanukovych's predecessor as president, former central bank governor Viktor Yushchenko, helping to finance Yushchenko's Ukrainopol's self-defense bloc. He also supported Yulia Tymoshenko and her bloc of political parties, Bloc Yulia Tymoshenko. In the 2012 Ukrainian parliamentary election, Kolomoyskyi was seen by the Ukrainian Democratic Alliance for Reform's critics as standing behind the UDA's Vitaly Klitschko, although the party denied he was a sponsor. Now, let's shift our perspective and explore confrontation with Putin through a fresh lens, unlocking new perspectives. After the events of Euromaidan forced the resignation of Yanukovych in February 2014, acting President Alexander Turchinov appointed Kolomoyskyi governor of Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. Kolomoyskyi responded to the then-beginning 2014 pro-Russian unrest in Ukraine by saying, "I don't understand how Ukrainians and Russians can fight," before blaming Yanukovych and President of Russia Vladimir Putin for the unrest, referring to the latter as a schizophrenic of short stature, and accused him of having a messianic drive to recreate the Russian Empire or the Soviet Union, which he said would plunge the world into catastrophe. 2 days later, Russian President Vladimir Putin, who was to respond to Yanukovych's ouster by annexing Crimea and Sevastopol and initiating a separatist war in the Donbas, described Kolomoyskyi as a unique crook. According to Putin, Kolomoyskyi even managed to cheat our Roman Abramovich 2 or 3 years ago. Scammed him, as our intellectuals like to say. They signed some deal. Abramovich transferred several $billion, while this guy never delivered and pocketed the money. When I asked him, "Why did you do it?" he said, "I never thought this was possible." Kolomoyskyi initially dismissed suggestions of separatism in Dnipropetrovsk. However, his then-deputy, Boris Filatov, argues that Kolomoyskyi, as governor, proceeded to do a great deal to prevent the so-called Russian Spring taking over in the region. In April, Kolomoyskyi offered a bounty for the capture of Russian-backed militants and incentives for the turning in of weapons. On 3 June 2014, Kolomoyskyi offered a $500,000 reward for the delivery of Oleg Sergeyev, a leader of the separatists, to the law enforcement agencies of Ukraine. He drafted thousands of Privat Group employees as auxiliary police officers. Kolomoyskyi is also believed to have spent $10 million to create the Dnipro Battalion and to have provided funds for the Ada, Azov, and Donbas volunteer battalions. Filatov concedes that these extraordinary measures were in Kolomoyskyi's interest, since the Russians would have seized his assets. Following their 2014 annexation of Crimea, the Russian authorities nationalized Kolomoyskyi's Crimean properties, including a civil airport. According to the pro-Russian Crimean leader Sergei Aksyonov, the move was totally justified due to the fact that he is one of the initiators and financiers of the special anti-terrorist operation in the eastern Ukraine where Russian citizens are being killed. In response, in January 2016, Kolomoyskyi filed a complaint against Russia at the Permanent Court of Arbitration. The Russians maintained that the Intergovernmental Court has no jurisdiction over the matter and refused to participate in proceedings. They responded with their own charges against Kolomoyskyi, accusing him, in his support for Ukrainian resistance to Russian-backed separatists in the Donetsk and Luhansk, of organizing the killing of civilians. Russia asked for Kolomoyskyi to be put on Interpol's wanted list. On 2 July 2014, a Russian district court called for his arrest. As governor, Kolomoyskyi went to some lengths to maintain a reputation for ruthlessness. Visitors to his office were unsettled by an enormous shark tank. Once he became mayor of Dnipro in November 2015, and after his boss's ouster as governor, Filatov found Kolomoyskyi's oligarch mentality unchanged. He started calling to ask me favors. Get ready to uncover the mysteries surrounding conflict with President Poroshenko as we navigate its intriguing terrain. On 25 March 2015, Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko signed a decree dismissing Kolomoyskyi from the post of Dnipropetrovsk SA head, saying Dnipropetrovsk region must remain a bastion of Ukraine in the east and protect peace. Kolomoyskyi was replaced by Valentin Reznikenko. This followed a struggle with Poroshenko for control of the state-owned oil pipeline operator. After Poroshenko's dismissal of Alexander Lozarko, who was a prick of Kolomoyskyi, as a chief executive of Uktransnafta, Kolomoyskyi dispatched his private security guards to seize control of the company's headquarters and expel the new government-appointed management. While Lozarko was in charge, the state-owned pipelines had been delivering oil to Kolomoyskyi-owned refinery in preference to competitors. In a further move against Kolomoyskyi, Poroshenko replaced Kolomoyskyi's longtime business partner Ihor Valeriyovych as governor of neighboring Odessa Oblast with the former Georgian president, Mikhail Saakashvili. That appointment triggered a dramatic and public war of words between Kolomoyskyi and Saakashvili. Saakashvili told journalists Kolomoyskyi was a gangster and smuggler. Kolomoyskyi told them Saakashvili was a dog without a muzzle and a snotty-nosed addict. Kolomoyskyi responded that the only difference between Poroshenko and Yanukovych is a good education, good English and lack of a criminal record. Everything else is the same. It's the same blood, the same flesh reincarnated. If Yanukovych was a lumpen dictator, Poroshenko is the educated usurper, slave to his absolute power, craven to absolute power. Let's now shift our focus to Dniprograd and explore the ways in which it shapes our perspective. The Russian invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 again highlighted the presence in Dnipro of the volunteer Dniprograd, Vati Dnipro, first formed in 2014 with Kolomoyskyi support in response to the war in Donbas. Mayor of Dnipro Boris Filatov dismissed suggestions that the group was Kolomoyskyi's private army. The Ukrainian billionaire, according to Filatov, helped with some equipment purchases, but the volunteer guard performs defense and law and order functions under the leadership of the national police. As we enter this new phase, let's analyze relationship with Volodymyr Zelenskyy from different angles and evaluate its significance. As of 2019, Kolomoyskyi owned 70% of the media group whose TV channel ed Servant of the People, a comedy series in which Volodymyr Zelenskyy plays a school teacher who, defying all expectations, including his own, becomes president of Ukraine on an anti-corruption platform. In March 2018, members of Zelenskyy's production company Kvartal 95 registered a new political party called Servant of the People. 12 months later, they succeeded in getting their candidate past Yulia Tymoshenko in the first round of the presidential election, and on 21 April 2019 to defeat President Poroshenko in the second round with 73% of the vote. Zelenskyy was viewed by opponents, and not least by the incumbent Poroshenko, as Kolomoyskyi's candidate. Zelenskyy appointed Kolomoyskyi's personal lawyer as a key campaign advisor, traveled to Geneva and Tel Aviv to confer with the then-exiled Kolomoyskyi on multiple occasions, and benefited from the endorsement of Kolomoyskyi's media empire. Once in office, Zelenskyy appeared to remove officials deemed a threat to Kolomoyskyi's interests, among them the Prosecutor General, Ruslan Ryabushaga, and the Governor of the National Bank of Ukraine, NBU, Yakov Smoly, and Zelenskyy's first Prime Minister, Oleksiy Honcharuk, who tried to loosen Kolomoyskyi's control of a state-owned electricity company. Following the opening of U.S. criminal investigations of Kolomoyskyi and his associates, the oligarch appeared to lose influence with Zelenskyy. In 2020, Zelenskyy sponsored a law that banned former owners from recovering nationalized assets. On 1 February 2021, Alexander Dubinsky, a former journalist who had actively opposed this so-called anti-Kolomoyskyi law, was expelled from Zelenskyy's Servant of the People parliamentary faction and Dubinsky expelled from Servant of the People faction. According from 2 February, a ruling faction in Ukraine's parliament expels MP Dubinsky, UNIAN 1 February 2021. Dubinsky was expelled from the Servant of the People faction. Ukrainska Pravda 1 February 2021, claiming he was part of a Russia-linked foreign influence network associated with fellow People's Deputy Andriy Derkach. The U.S. Department of the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control had placed Dubinsky on its sanction list. As had Rabinovich as co-founder of the opposition platform, Kolomoyskyi had begun to call for a new partnership between Ukraine and Russia. When that happened, he proposed that NATO would be soiling its pants and buying Pampers. Meanwhile, striking a more assertive tone, Zelenskyy was pushing for membership of the European Union and the NATO alliance. In response to the announcement of U.S. sanctions against Kolomoyskyi in April 2021, the Office of the Ukrainian President released a statement declaring Ukraine must overcome a system dominated by oligarchs and acknowledging that Ukraine is grateful to each partner for its support along the way. In October 2021, the Pandora Papers revealed that Zelenskyy and two of his Kvartal 95 associates operated a network of offshore companies in the British Virgin Islands, Cyprus, and Belize dating back to a Pandora Papers reveal offshore holdings of Ukrainian president and his inner circle, Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project 3 October 2021. Zelensky's office sought to justify the network as having been a means of protecting him against the aggressive abuse of tax inspection powers by President Viktor Yanukovych. Potentially more damaging than the appearance of tax evasion was the charge by a political ally of Poroshenko, the journalist Volodymyr Zelenskyy, that the network had laundered some $41 million in funds from Kolomoyskyi's PrivatBank. While investigative journalists suspected that channels of communication with the president remained open, Kolomoyskyi insisted that he no longer communicated with Zelenskyy. He explained that his former prick has chosen his path. As President Zelenskyy has his own vision, program, plans, and as he, a businessman, no longer wants anything from the state, they have nothing to talk about. Kolomoyskyi had the reputation for being able to dictate the votes of deputies within Zelensky's parliamentary faction by phone, but press reports before the Russian invasion suggested he had disappeared, staying deliberately away from politics. Despite this, in January 2022, Zelensky's Justice Minister Denis Mulyska proposed that Kolomoyskyi was an obvious name to be entered on the register of the new anti-oligarchic law that was to come into effect in May 2022. In the wake of the Russian invasion, Zelenskyy was seen to be under increased pressure to counter Ukraine's reputation as a kleptocracy and respond to the ongoing investigation of Kolomoyskyi in the United States. In both Washington and European capitals, proponents of large-scale assistance to Ukraine contended with Transparency International's European ranking of Ukraine as second only to Russia in institutional corruption. Due to accountancy concerns, approved funds were not being released. Now, let's delve into the intricacies of revocation of Ukrainian citizenship and subsequent sanctions and explore its various aspects. On 28 July 2022, Zelenskyy appeared to confirm the authenticity of an 18 July presidential decree published online by opposition MP Serhiy Vlesenko that stripped Ukrainian citizenship from Kolomoyskyi and 9 others, including Vadim Rabinovich and both Hennedy Corbin, former deputy governor of Dnipropetrovsk under Kolomoyskyi and since 24 February 2022, head of the Dnipro Territorial Defense. And although dual citizenship is prohibited under Ukrainian law, all three held Israeli passports. Kolomoyskyi, who additionally holds a Cypriot passport, reportedly quipped that while Ukrainian law prohibits dual citizenship, it says nothing about triple citizenship. Kolomoyskyi potentially had safe haven in Ukraine. Article 25 of the country's constitution states that a citizen of Ukraine cannot be expelled from Ukraine or extradited to another state. But there may be grounds for appeal, as it also rules that a citizen of Ukraine cannot be deprived of citizenship. There is no speculation, Zelenskyy said. We grant or revoke citizenship of our state on a regular basis. This is a constant process, and all this happens all the time within the framework of the current legislation. Justice Minister Denis Mulyska refuted the suggestion that by this measure Zelenskyy shielded Kolomoyskyi from the proscriptions of the anti-oligarch law, and noted that for the purposes of the law foreigners could also be designated as oligarchs. In July 2022, a member of Zelensky's team reportedly claimed that Kolomoyskyi was holed up in the Menorah Center that he helped finance in Dnipro, hiding from Russian shelling, and that he had retired not only from business, but also from socio-political life. At the end of June 2022, the barrister representing Kolomoyskyi in the London High Court, Mark Howard KC, said his client was a target of the Russian president. We know that President Putin has him within his sights, he told the court. The barrister for his co-defendant in the PrivatBank fraud case made the same claim for Ihor Valeriyovych, whom he also described as hiding from bombs in Ukraine. Claire Montgomery QC suggested to the court that the war has rendered oligarchy a worthless concept in the Ukraine. Acknowledging the difficulties faced by the two billionaires in preparing their cases, Justice Tra agreed to delay the trial until June 2023. Under martial law, in November 2022, the Ukrainian authorities seized two oil companies, Ukhnefta and Ukhtnefta, in which Kolomoyskyi is a major shareholder, after Ukraine's security service SBU said it had uncovered the embezzlement of more than. At the end of January 2023, they raided Kolomoyskyi's home in what a Zelenskyy ally described as a sweeping wartime clampdown on corruption that would change the country. As we enter this new phase, let's navigate the complexities of September 2023 arrest and charges and discover its practical applications. Kolomoyskyi was arrested by the Security Service of Ukraine SBU on 2 September 2023 on charges of money laundering and fraud, and placed under pre-trial arrest until 31 October with the option of posting 509 million hryvnia $14 million in bail. Ukraine's Prosecutor General's office accused Kolomoyskyi of laundering $13.50 million between 2013 and 2020 by transferring funds abroad. Kolomoyskyi's lawyers said he would not pay bail and would appeal the ruling. President Zelenskyy thanked Ukrainian law enforcement in his 2 September nightly address, saying there would be no more decades-long business as usual for those who plundered Ukraine and put themselves above the law and any rules. On 7 September, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine (NABU) placed additional charges against Kolomoyskyi for allegedly embezzling 9.2 billion hryvnia $250 million from PrivatBank, using an offshore company between January and March 2015, and seized his assets together with the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office (SAPO). On 15 September, the SBU announced that Kolomoyskyi had been served with a third notice of suspicion for the alleged embezzlement of $5.8 billion, approximately $155.6 million, also from PrivatBank. Suri Leshenko, an advisor in Zelensky's office, reported on Telegram that the new allegations included forging documents, illegal takeovers of property by an organized group, and property acquisition in questionable circumstances as summarized by Reuters, and were based on an investigation by the Ukrainian Bureau of Economic Security. Following the third set of charges, the court increased Kolomoyskyi's bail to 3.8 billion hryvnia $105 million. Now, let's shift our attention to personal life. Kolomoyskyi is currently a citizen of Israel and Cyprus. He is married to fellow Dnipro native Irina Mikhailovna Kolomoyskyi. They have a daughter, Angelika Kolomoyskyi, and a son, Ihor Valeriyovych Kolomoyskyi. Prepare yourself for an eye-opening discussion on awards in the upcoming portion of this video. 2006 Knight of the Order for Merits III Degree 19 August 2015 for Sacrifice and Love for Ukraine from the UOCKP and Patriarch Philaret. I hope you learned something new today. Let me know what you found most interesting in the comments below.